Good evening, everybody. Sorry about the audio quality that we're going to have for today's stream. I forgot my microphone, so hopefully this is all being picked up on my microphone from the laptop. If not, just let me know, and then I can move it a little closer. But today we're going to talk about something that, because of a recent video that I made, is a little controversial, I suppose, and that is the topic of cold air intakes. I think a lot of people, when they're watching some other car content, maybe it's a car that they don't have, or maybe it's not the exact model they have, or maybe the car isn't going to serve the same purpose as them. They interpret whether or not a modification is worth it or not, or if it's like even going to do anything for them. And this brings up the whole issue of cold air intakes in the respect that, do they really do anything? And if we're looking at the price of them, which they can be pretty expensive, right? So, $500 for something just as simple as a little bit of tubing, and then you have the filter right there. And then you go into some other ones like Burger Motorsports. It's just the simple tube with the filter. That's a lot cheaper, half the price, because it's not necessarily as intricate. Keys Motorsports, this one is right in the middle at 400. You have some heat shielding here. You have extra tubing. This is for a different engine, of course. And the thing that a lot of people I noticed are concerned is because I posted this one where for the N55, the intake is pretty good as it is. You don't necessarily need a cold air intake per se because they're expensive. If you get a drop-in filter for less than $100, you can pick it up on eBay, maybe even make a bid or an offer. Comes in a whole lot cheaper. Then you pick up something like this, like these intake scoops, and you're all in for less than $200. If you want to pick up both sides, it is going to be a little bit more. Then you're talking about kind of like that cold air intake price range. But if you were already willing to spend that amount of money, the reason why I would say that this is worth more is because you're going to get it right behind the grill. So you're going to get it right, in this big area here that's already taking in a lot of air. And this is where the air routes from already. So you're using the OEM system that's already pretty good. If we look at, let's see here. If we look at this picture here, in regards to the N55, you can see the airflow pathway where it's going to come in through the grill and then actually has to travel, off towards the side, towards the headlight a little bit. And there's a little bit of like a upward climb that it has to make once it's in the intake, because the intake, where it's going to route from, or sorry, the air is going to route through the tubing to the intake, which is below the filter for the tube. That's going to then suck up the air and transport it down into the turbo. So all of that is going to mitigate any water or any extra air that you're going to pick up with something of this design. This is going to bring in more air. Yes, it's going to potentially bring in some moisture if it rains, but some people are saying, if you're caught in a really heavy rainstorm or anything like that, it's going to hydrolock the engine. If water is getting up this high, because it's not going to be rain. Rain is not going to it's not like a vacuum. If you've ever looked at water and how much suction is required to pull up any body of water, it's quite a bit. So to bring in water through this piping, run it all the way through and then up, and whatever doesn't get soaked up by the filter, because it's kind of like a cotton material, get soaked up, and then it's going to go down through the hot turbo. Like, that's a lot of distance to travel for water, especially in an environment like this where it's hot. There's a lot of air passing by. Like, it's going to evaporate more than likely. Then you turn around and you have people talking about dirt. Oh, it's going to get even dirtier. Well, two things. It's going to be the same thing. One is it's going to do all of that, same as the water. But if there's like any dirt or anything, when you, let's see this. When the air goes through that, right? So you're looking at the like the bumper here. So if we just look at this picture, right, it's going to get sucked in through the intake, through the turbo. So the hot air is going to get most of it, right? The heat from the turbo is going to mitigate most of the water, most of the dirt. It's going to pretty much incinerate it for the most part. But whatever does get through there is going to, it will then have to drop down into the intercooler. And there's like no way air or water, once it's in the intercooler, it's going to get sucked back in through the charge pipe into the engine. It's almost never going to happen because that is a great distance for water or dirt to travel. There's just not enough suction in that system for it to get that far. Like I said, is if air is getting up here to the grills, you have bigger concerns on your hands, right? You're probably getting out of the car at that point. And if you really want to for maintenance, you don't necessarily need to. Some people, they'll empty out their intercooler every once in a while, but I think that's even overkill as well. Like you don't really need to unless you really need your car to perform at a very high level, like you're tracking for time, you're tracking in for competition's sake. Like unless you're doing something to that extent, you don't really need to. Um, and then if we're looking at the N20 as well as the as the B58, pretty much anything that's not the N55 afterwards, the N55 is the only one that pretty much pulls it from the car's left side. Everything else pretty much pulls it on the right. The M cars, of course, they pull it through both. But if we're looking at something that pulls in from the other side, I had the picture here. Where'd it go? Not that one. There was a really good picture. I guess I lost it. Oh, right here. This is kind of good enough. So same thing is if we kind of borrow these two pictures and look at them together, is we're going to see that we have air coming in through the grill. So it's going to have to make it through the grill, through this ducting system. What you see right... How come I can't see it? There it is. It's going to have to make it past the headlight system. Sorry, my contacts are pretty dry. Through the ducting system that you see like right there. So this is why I said like if you want to install the intake scoops, do the OEM ducts. That way it will route towards the engine bay versus just the headlights. So we'll go through this ducting system to the intake, and it's gonna have to kind of come up. So it's gonna have that upward sweeping motion down through this. And sure, it has a shorter distance to travel if we're talking about water and dirt, but still have to go down into the turbo, right? And it's not straight down. Like you guys can see the cursor here. It goes down like this S shape down here, and then down into the turbo, down through the intercooler, back up to the charge pipe up here. So like I'm saying is it's a huge distance to travel. If you have an aftermarket charge pipe, right? So as it's coming up too, so this is the other thing that you have to factor in too. What little moisture there is, what very little moisture, what very little dirt, you also have to factor in. It's probably going to stick to the walls of the charge pipe. It's going to stick to the walls of the turbo inlet. The moisture is going to get soaked up by the filter media because of it's just like a cotton material, so it's going to soak it up just like a t-shirt. But if you think about it, you're going to put these two pipes together, and these two pipes, they don't touch. There's this little cavity here in between the pipes. So if you have an aftermarket charge pipe, you're going to have some space in the middle that the dirt is going to dip into, and then it's going to sit at the bottom of this lip. It's very unlikely that this would cause any damage to the car, unless you're like in a flood, unless you're like in a hurricane situation. But like I said, if that's the case, you have worse problems on your hands. If we're talking like an E36 intake, like a traditional intake where there's no turbo involved, there's no intercooler involved. How can I just see the picture? Right, so this is going to get pulled in and then right into the engine bay. Let's see if we can get a wider shot here. Here we go. No, it won't let me do that. Okay. Okay, so we'll break this up into segments. So let's just say this is the engine bay, of course. This is your intake, and let's say you snake this all the way down towards, the bottom portion of the bumper. Even then, that's a lot of distance to travel. Like, you just have to imagine, like, your car relatively, like, that front end comes up towards, like, your hip about. So that's a good couple of feet depending on how tall you are. And basically, to travel up all of this at a steeper gradient and then come into the engine bay, even on an NA car, is extremely unlikely. If you have a short ram air intake, there is no way. It's at the height of the headlight. So if you're concerned about this, like dirt or water, like if you see that one video that I have here, you see a lot of the comments say, there's rain. And then there's this one over here that says like, oh, it's not really a scoop because of the pressure of the hood. It's not going to bring any more air into there. I would beg to differ, right? Like, there's going to be air that goes into this area versus having something that's not in alignment with where the air is going to come in. It's going to be off to the side. I'm pretty sure there's going to be more air there. Not only that, is that they also have the numbers to back it up. All right, so there is some sort of increase in a pretty proportional way. It's not like a huge dip in the beginning and then it kind of meets back up here. No, it's pretty consistent that the numbers are higher with the scoop. Then you pair that with something like with a high flow filter, which is pretty much what's in alignment with all these intakes, right? They're all using that. None of them are using paper filters, which is better for filtering, but again, because of the nature of the system, you don't necessarily need to worry about it. Sure, of course, you want to do things like frequent oil changes, right? When you get air into the system, it's going to make everything a little bit dirtier. So, maybe you have to change your plugs a little bit earlier depending on the conditions that you're driving in, all of that stuff. But it's not something that I would be overly concerned with. So I hope, because I saw a lot of these things, like, see here, water going in easier. Slamming the hood, we could talk about that another time. Let's see here. What does the shape do? Oh, actually, a lot of these are about the hood. So really quick, when it comes to the hood, the reason why I slammed the GTS hood is the main reason is that's the way it's supposed to be closed because the original GTS hood is carbon fiber. So rather than applying pressure, like basically like pressure points, imagine um, somebody's like walking on hardwood floor. You're never really worried about like a big bodybuilder dude who's like 300 or 400 pounds wearing sneakers. You're always worried about like the little lady who's wearing high heels because they have all of their pressure, all of their weight concentrated into one point. So rather than applying pressure to each corner of the hood latches and potentially crack your carbon fiber hood, you slam it down, not too hard, but hard enough so that it will catch and it will close. But what that will do is it will prevent those pressure points. You have the little bumps there, but usually once it latches on, it's good. It kind of catches itself. Uh, and I saw videos on this before. I went to like several different shops, and they said no. The GTS said you don't do it like that. And even if you have the aluminum one, aluminum is a much softer metal than steel. So if you don't want to dent your new hood, then you'll do the same thing. So that's the whole issue with that. Let's see here. Yeah, so hopefully, if you guys saw this video as well as, some of the other ones that are kind of coming out, yes, I will agree that a downpipe and tune is going to be better than an intake and or scoops and a filter, but they work together, right? The turbo is going to only be as efficient and pass on that gas that's not going to be bottlenecked at the downpipe. There, it's only going to be able to pass on as much air as you bring in. So if you want to do the downpipe first, do the tune first, sure, no problem. But if you want to make it more efficient, you want to make the turbo, give you a little bit more oomph, you have to bring in more air, which is going to be through a high flow filter, through some kind of scoop system that brings in more air into the turbo itself. So with that, we will jump into our Q&A section here. Ferris, oh, okay. Ooh, why is that so small? There we go. Yep, hope it helped. N20 engine oil. Let's see here. No. Typically 195 should not exceed 105 under normal conditions. Okay, so it sounds like you're running hot. These engines do run hot, so I'm not sure if that's maybe you're maybe low on oil. That could be the case if you're running too hot. Check your coolant level. It could be a sign that the water pump is starting to go. Um, if you have a tune like Bimmer code, like BM3, there is a feature on there, and I don't know. I tried looking for it on Bimmer code. That's why I said that. There's a feature called max cooling mode. Now, it will put a little bit more stress on your water pump because the water pump's going to work a little bit harder. And in terms of temperatures, that's why I think that, like, let's see here. Oh, I'll save this for a second. So I think when it comes to cooling modifications, they all work together. Not any one of them is going to be the end all cure all for your situation because when it comes to something like the Mossman oil thermostat, right? It's just going to send the oil down to the cooler sooner. It's not going to necessarily cool the car better on its own. It's just opening up more so that the oil will then, once the car is appropriately warmed up, it will send the oil down to the cooler so the car can cool more efficiently. So, say for instance, your car gets the operating temp and you're driving, and in the time that the OEM thermostat would send oil down to the cooler, you're already at work. Now, in this case, you have the Mossman oil thermostat and it's sending oil down to the cooler sooner. That way, when you're at work, your car isn't as stressed as much. It doesn't heat up as much. But not only when you do that, you can also do something like like a bigger oil cooler. More efficient. There's no plastic, so it radiates heat a little bit better. It has a larger capacity, so you're going to put in like half a quart more. So that's also going to help reduce down the temps. Not only that, is you could also do a CFF makes it. Yeah. So you could do a CSF radiator, right? This is going to increase the cooling efficiency of the car because of the fins that are associated with this. It's more efficient at cooling the car, right? So now you're opening it up sooner. You're sending it to a more efficient oil cooler. Then you also have the radiator that when the oil and coolant in their respective channels are running next to each other for that heat exchange, your radiator is acting more efficiently. Even if you have the max cooling on with your tune, because you have all of these things that are doing it passively, the water pump doesn't necessarily have to work as hard because you're doing things like this. Another thing that I really advocate for is, let's imagine this is the N55. I'm not sure if it is, but if this is the N55, this is going into the car. So this will come in. I recommend that you do pick up the scoops as well. I mean, the OEM duct as well, because when we look at the diagram, and it's going to be similar on both sides, right? So this is where like the intake or the duct is, the Velocitech duct. It's going to bring in air here through this little L-shaped tube and then out into the engine bay. If you don't put this duct here, it's just going to go into the headlight, and that's not going to help cool the car off at all. So one, you're bringing in colder air into the engine bay, but of course you kind of don't want the hood to buff it. So what's one way to relieve the pressure in the hood? That is going to be through the GTS hood that has the vent here. Now, you don't have to get the carbon fiber one. I got the aluminum one to save some money. But the thought process is the same, right? So this is a functional duct, if you will. Why won't it let me see? Right there. Most of the GTS hoods are like this, right? Like that duct is functional. Like you can see through it right there. So if you're bringing in air through the grills, one is going to the intake. Unless you have an M car, then both are going to the intake, down to the turbo, intercooler, up to the charge pipe, all that good stuff. But if you have one that's just bringing colder air to cool down the car, now you're going to have to worry about how's that air going to come out. One is you have the open channel on the back end that's going to be coming out towards the windshield, but you also have another channel that's open towards the front, which is kind of where that oil thermostat is from Mosselman. So it's good that you have different channels for the air to escape, right? You're not just bringing in air into this semi-closed environment without giving it an appropriate channel to escape. So all of these things in terms of cooling, like, yes, you could have or you could just do max cooling, put a lot more stress on the water pump, but it's going to wear it out sooner. The water pump and the thermostat, their whole goal is just to get to the desired temperature that you set it for, or that max cooling is set for. But if you do things that are passive, like sending down oil down to the oil cooler sooner, a more efficient cooler that can hold more oil, that's going to help with heat dissipation, you're going to have a more efficient radiator. You can do things like bring in colder air to cool the engine bay, but you can also give a channel for that so that the hot air can come out. It's going to be the same with the intake, right? Not any one of these things is going to be really good on its own, because at some point there's going to be another bottleneck. It's not until you do the intake, where you'll feel a little bit more pedal responsiveness, that you will feel the benefits of colder air, because most of the cold air, most of that action happens at the intercooler. So if you really want cold air, it's better to do an intercooler, because that's where most of the air is going to be cooled. However, the intercooler can only cool the air that's brought in by the turbo, which receives it from the intake. And then you go down the rest of the exhaust pathway. So that was a really long-winded answer. I'm sorry. But yeah, it seems like 120 Celsius is a bit high. So I would say check those things. Check your oil, check your coolant. The other thing too is, if you didn't change your coolant and it shows that it's good, some people in certain areas, just because they don't need it as much, like if you're in California, you could probably get away with, even with like a lower ratio than 50-50. Like you could do more water than coolant, because it never really gets that cold in California that you're really concerned about the water freezing per se. And then it also doesn't get too hot as well. So you don't need to rely on the coolant properties itself. It comes concentrated, so you should still dilute it. It's best to do 50-50, but some people, if you're on a budget, if you have like a few different BMWs and you really want to make that 1 to 2 gallons stretch, I would say, like, it's not recommended, but I just know that some people do it, and it really depends on where you live and your driving conditions. So if you haven't changed out the coolant, try doing that and see what happens. Victor, I thought about installing an aftermarket intake. Ooh, what's going on here? Here we go. Installing an aftermarket air intake on my B48 420i, but after watching the video you talked about it, I realized that it's not necessary. I don't want hot air in the air intake. Yeah, so that's the other thing too, is when it comes to these other intakes, these ones, like, they're pulling from the environment. Air is coming in from the environment. The OEM intake, it's pretty much sealed, right? So the OEM one, this is sealed off, right? It's closed off, and then it's going to pull air in. This, you have to factor in that you have all of this top surface air that's going to be pulling air from the engine bay, and that's not a cold air intake. As I said before, is most of the air is going to be cooled by the intercooler, but the colder you can make that air before it gets to the intercooler, the more efficient that intercooler is going to be, right? The cooler air you get going into the turbo, the better. It's a small thing to nitpick. I guess, like, if you're on the track, it really matters more. But for like a daily, it's minimal that you'll notice this. Like, if you run two cars that have similar setups, but one's pulling in from the engine bay, one's pulling from the environment, you might not notice it as much. But if we're going to do something in terms of modification, and if you don't necessarily care about the engine bling, if you don't care about the sound, then we want to be as efficient as we can, not only with the car's system itself in terms of intake, cooling, all those things, but we want to be efficient with our money as well, right? Like I said, is unless you're really committed to, I need my car to look a certain way, I want my car to do this or that, then yeah, by all means, go with whatever looks cool, sounds cool. But if you want your car to work efficiently, if you want to save as much money, I really think just a pair of scoops and a drop-in high-flow filter is the way to go. Victor, so I'll leave the OEM air intake and just buy a better filter, Canon high-flow. In the future, I'll add an air scoop to redirect the front. Nice. Yeah, well, let me know how it goes. If you need anything, please let me know. And then I'm glad. I hope that you save some money with this too. So I do have a discount code with them. I don't know if this is 5%. My discount code's better than that. I think my discount code is Vroom, all caps, and I think you get 10%, not get 10, and then it shows up 5. Um, with your scoops, but also Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, all those things, all those typical sales are coming up, right? We're already getting into it. We're already pretty much halfway through the month already. First, what are my favorite tools for the moment right now? Power tools, I would say Milwaukee. If I could go back, I probably wouldn't get the big M18 half-inch impact because the stubby is pretty much good for everything that I'm gonna need now. So I would probably stick to that M12 platform. If you can get around the grip being a little chunky, it's perfect. If we're talking hand tools, my favorite 3/8 ratchet is from Olsa Tools right now. I also tend to like gear wrench ratcheting wrenches. The 120 XP is phenomenal. Pliers, this is going to be controversial. I like, it depends. I like most of the Snap on knockoffs from Harbor Freight, the Icon lineup, with the exception to if there is a version of that plier pretty much like the same, like it has to be the exact same almost. In the Doyle lineup, I tend to lean towards the Doyle. So like the 7-inch needle nose pliers, I prefer the Doyle. It's the cheaper one. It's not the as premium, but I do like that one more. I like their Knipex knockoffs. I think for us, what we're using them for, we're not beating on them all the time. We're not a professional mechanic. Like those pliers from Harbor Freight, I think are really, really good. And then sockets, I usually tend to lean towards Tecton. I like their all-inclusive sets, no skips. Mm. Ratchets, the Tecton, I would say in terms of ratchets, if you can spring it, the Olsa Tools ones, the made in USA ones, those are really good. If you can't, the the Quinn from Harbor Freight is nice as well. But if you can get them during the holiday seasons like we're about to come into, you can do the Icon or the Quinn with a coupon, or you can go on the Tecton outlet and see what they have. Oh, so they don't have anymore. With the Tecton ones, just make sure to drop in a fair amount of grease and oil because they come kind of dry. And then they smooth out really well. Part of me really wants to recommend the Icon ones because with the Icon ones, once all of their current stock is phased out and they roll in with the new ratchets, if you ever needed to warranty it in, you're going to get the new one. Some of them have locking flex and all that other stuff. I think they have a better mechanism for the pawl system as well. The Gear Wrench 120 XP is also good if you get that on sale. So I I feel like you need both. And if you're going to ask me which one I have to pick between locking and fixed, different situations call for each. But these ranked really good. The head of this is so much smaller than the old one. Um, yeah, the 120 from Anything Gear Wrench is really, really nice. So, yeah, that would be my recommendation. Hope that helps, Espan. Uh, Daniel. Hey, Fritz, love the vids. Got a 2017 M240i myself, 15,000 miles, tuned on MHD, but it's throwing chassis flat tire and collision safety. Oh, I hate that one. Car's literally auto revving when I clutch in. Took it to a shop nearby and charged me for a diagnostics. No fix, of course. So normally that happens right after you tune the car, or right after like you've disconnected the battery. Say for instance you're doing like a screen install or anything like maybe valve cover, anything that usually requires you to disconnect the battery for an extended period of time, and then you plug it back in, or reconnect it. That usually does spin up, but it also goes away pretty much pretty quick too. The chassis issue, if you have some kind of EDC delete on your car, that could be throwing it. If you can't get into Sport Plus, I would say check your connections for your EDC. The flat tire issue, if you don't have OEM TPMS sensors, that could be it. So not every BMW, it's finicky actually. So mine's a 15 M235i, and I have to get OEM uh, tire pressure sensors. I tried running aftermarkets and it didn't work. It didn't read at all. It just, so my whole thing was like, no pressure or whatever. In terms of, I haven't had the collision one come up. So try that. I would say maybe like do a little tweak to your MHD tune. Just do a slight little tweak, whatever it is, and then try reflashing the car again. If that doesn't work, if it still gives you issues, try reflashing it to like the original tune by relocking the DME, and then tune it back to whatever you want it to. The video that I have, let me see here. Which video was that? It is, it's a different scan tool if it's not yours, but the process is going to be the same. So to kind of relock it with the DME, as I was mentioning, it's right. Let's see here, vehicle status right here. It's around the 23-minute mark. So give this video a watch. Let's see here. Oh, sorry, not the 23-minute mark. Around the 24-minute mark. This will be that whole relocking the DME and then coding it the way that you want. Hopefully that will help you. Oh, and then as far as tools, tool recommendations. Oh, these are deals for tools. I think I went over my preferred tools not too long ago. These are old, actually. Maybe I'll do an update for the tools. Yeah, maybe we'll do that next week then. But the last time we did a stream about a month ago, I was talking about like used tools. Facebook Marketplace is great. eBay is great. The used corner on Amazon is great. I got all of my long double box end 120 XPs from the used section. So you're going to find a lot of good deals. If you want to see, Esteban, going back to you, some ways that you can pick up on deals, I kind of go over it in this video. And I think I pull up some of my statements too, in terms of how much I paid for some of these tools. So I hope that one will help you. Yeah, no problem. If you have any recommendations as well, please let us know. And then Victor, your 420 has around 56,000 miles. I'm the third owner. Is it recommended to change differential and translucent? No, you don't have to. I saw a lot of other people, if I'm not mistaken, around like 70 or 100,000. Depends on how hard you beat on it too. You don't necessarily need to do it now. You could just do it later on down the road, unless it's giving you some issues. I also always recommend that when you drain these, um, the transmission more so than the diff, because the diff, the fill and the drain is the same. With the transmission, loosen the fill cap first because it's always on top. If you can't get that off, it would be a nightmare if you already drained it. The other thing too is if you can for both of these, because if there's something wrong with your transmission, if there's something wrong with your differential, the metal particulates in the fluid are going to help it grab as you know it's applying pressure, as it's turning, as it's moving. If you remove all that old fluid and there is something wrong with one of those parts, you put in new fluid with no metallic shavings, if you will, it can cause it to slip, especially with the transmission more so than the differential. But it's still good practice to drain it into some sort of relatively clear, or if you want, you can also like let it drain into your normal bin and then try to catch it halfway through and get a little bit of it. With a differential, all that you have to do is when you suction it out, uh, drop it into a relatively clean container. Let's see here. My contacts are killing me today. Daniel sounds good. I'll give it a try. I think, yep, no problem. Hope it helps. Yeah, if not, let us know, and then whatever you find out, and then you paid for a diagnostic. What do they even tell you? J.K. Cohen, what's the best coilovers for a 435i? I would recommend if you don't track your car, you could go V1 or V2 from KW and then get Swift springs. But take whatever money that you would have spent on V3s and then just buy Swift springs. So my video here will hopefully lend some insight to that topic. It also gives you a little bit better range in terms of like height adjustment, clearance, and they feel better. Like they feel to me better than the springs that came with the KW kit. And then I would, for the most part, stay away from the club sports because you know that camber plate, it's relatively thin. If you really want to run camber plates, I would really recommend going with Vorschlag. Their monoball is bigger, so it's going to be able to take the beatings for a longer period of time, and everything is pretty much replaceable. So if it's just the bushing that goes out, you don't have to get a whole nother plate again. They'll send you out just that part. Use um, oh my goodness, I forgot what pliers they're called. So these are gear wrench pliers that I have, the C-clip pliers, right? And then you pull it out, you replace it, boom, you're on your way. And it's also like the housing itself is like one whole machined aluminum piece. So and it's pretty thick, so it's a lot sturdier, a lot stronger than the ones that come with the club sports. So that would be my recommendation. The V3 is only if you really need the extra adjustability, but still, if you have clearance issues, it's not really the height. Like if you've maxed out the height, you still have clearance issues. Maybe you run bigger tires or whatnot. You have a certain offset, and you already rolled your fenders. Try going with Swift springs. They're a little bit stiffer, so you won't have that rubbing issue as much if you do. Danilo. Hi Fritz, thanks for all your support with the videos of DIYs to the M235i. I just changed the charge pipe and I found some oil at the entrance of the throttle body and the sensor. Yeah, so that could be a little bit of blow by. You could remedy that with an oil catch can. Um, Usually that's indicative of something else, like oil is getting into areas where it shouldn't. Um, so if you look, so the reason why you get oil there is because if you're looking at the turbo inlet pipe, So I believe it feeds off from the valve cover. So from the valve cover, what's that pipe called? It's oh my goodness, I'm blanking on that name right now. So this, oh my goodness, if one of you guys can help me, that'd be great. It's like at the tip, it's like at the forefront of my mind, but I just can't put the name of what this part is called. Breather hose, crankcase breather hose. I want to call it something else though for some reason. Okay. So if we look at this, so this is your valve cover. This is the breather hose. This dips into here. And so your valve cover could be starting to go bad. That could be one thing. It could also be some other issues, but it's probably just that you have excessive blow by for whatever reason. It dips into here, and that's indicative of like a long term issue because, like I said, with oil and dirt, it's not going to happen all at once. So if oil is able to run up the length of that, something's been going on for a while now. So I would say look at the valve cover. You could look at any other areas that have a leak, like the oil filter housing gasket. Um, I would say just check everything kind of like where your oil lines run and start to see if you have a leak in those areas and then repair those, clean out the pipe, and then see if you get some more. Of course, you will to an extent because if it made it all the way up to the charge pipe, let's see here. Where'd that one picture go? I like that one. Yeah. So if it made it down all the way through here, through the intercooler up to the charge pipe, there's going to be some kind of residual that kind of goes back up. So it's going to be hard to measure this, but I would say wherever you're at right now, take a picture of the amount of oil that's there, make whatever repairs in terms of leaks that you find, and then over the course of time, does the oil start to become less and less at that same point? If so, you've probably cleaned up the issue with whatever is causing the excessive blow by. If it's like the same, then you have to track down another leak, or it's really the valve cover. I didn't understand well what is the cause for the oil in the charge pipe. So basically, let me see here. Grab a picture. See if I can find one of it upside down. Easier should have one. No. Let me see here. Hopefully if we get a good picture, it'll make explaining it a little easier. Someone's got to give me an upside down picture. Okay, here we go. That's what I was looking for. So basically, right, so like your engine's running, right, and then the oil, if this cover wasn't there, right, for simplicity's sake, let's just say if this cover wasn't there, you would have oil from the engine like just splattering all over the place, right? The the point of like a lot of the mechanisms in the car is to have the oil come up, drop down to lubricate everything. As it's coming up, the valve cover blocks it from going back down. Now, pretty much as it's going up, all the oil should be in its respective channel, right? There's going to be a little bit of splatter here and there. That's kind of why you can see the little stuff here. But essentially what happens is if the oil isn't within its channel, right? If there's a little bit of leakage there, if you will, if the oil doesn't cool down in its pathway of where it needs to go appropriately, it's going to become vapor. That vapor is called blow by, and that's going to be what Where is it in here? It's on the other. It's like right around here, I think. I have to see it. And then that channel runs along the top. Here we go. Oh no, that's an N54. I was like, why does that look weird? Let me get it so that it faces us. Okay, so you can see here, like you see all these little grooves and all these little channels right here. This is what I mean by the oil is supposed to be in its specific space, right? If it vapors too much, it can leak through the gaskets, right? Because we have gaskets that are supposed to maintain the oil within their specific channels, within their specific banks. And that's not a good picture. Let's see here. And if it does... Okay, this is going to be like probably as good as I can get at this very moment. How come I can't zoom in? Oh, my God. Give me 1 second. Let's see here. Okay, this is good. This is going to be good. Right? So whatever oil, because of emission standards, evaporates or turns into basically vapor, it's going to run through this top channel, out through here, down to the turbo inlet, through the turbo. And the idea is, one, in theory, it shouldn't be that much, and it can help kind of lubricate the turbo if any oil gets in there. And if any oil gets in there, it's no harm, no foul, because it's so hot that it could vapor it, and it won't be that big of a deal. It could, like I said, lubricate it, and that could kind of work as well, quasi, versus just letting it kind of go out into the atmosphere. That's the theory behind it. And then even if you're to kind of like take this in and it runs through the entire system, it's going to go back to the engine bay where it's going to combust, turn into vapor still, and there's more chances of it getting burned off versus it going into the environment. The bad part is that it could get onto your valves. Your valves could kind of like stick. It's going to be less efficient for combustion's sake. So your car's not going to be as powerful. It's not going to be as efficient when it comes to gas. That's kind of the issue for it, why you would have that, and what's causing it is that something like one of these seals, it's not sealing, or your car is running extremely hot and you're not running vapor. So an easy solution would be an oil catch can, but you are, what's it called? It's called you're treating the symptom, not the disease, right? So in the N54, it was excessive, but N55 and onward, blow by is not that big of a deal. You don't really need to walnut blast those cars until they are very, very, very high in mileage. So with that, I would say if you want to do a catch can, great. Maybe if you're running a ton of power, depending on your setup, that's fine. But if you're doing a catch can, you should also try to track down the leak as well. I ran a catch can on my car, and I caught almost no oil in the time that I had it. Victor, no problem at all. Yeah, happy to help. Vendetta Customs, how's it going? I'm about to check my rod bearings tomorrow. 97,000 M235i. I found shrapnel size. Ooh, in the filter, it's like paper. It's like paper clips. I have no idea. I've never heard of that. In the filter. And you must be one of the rare ones to have the to need to do the rod bearings. If that's the case. Because if I'm not mistaken, on the M235i, the rod bearings are forged. Like they're a stronger rod bearing. in the filter. Something came loose. Something came loose. I don't know. I'm sorry. That's the honest answer that's the most honest answer I can give you. If you find out once you're all done with that, please come back and let us know. JK Coin, thanks. Noted on that. I'll probably go with the KWV1. By the way, is it normal to have check engine light when your battery is bad? I've replaced the MAF sensor and tightened the gas cap. No, you would just get like a low discharge warning. That would be it. Check engine light. I don't think so. I mean, I ran with the low battery because I had to make the videos and do some testing, and I never had a check engine light. Yeah, scan it and see what comes up. Oh yeah, the hose. Yeah, there it is. PCV breather valve hose. Yes, that's it. Thank you. Thank you. Gosh, PC. That's what it was. Oh, now I feel so much better. Thank you. Elethal. Will you ever do a diverter valve DIY on the M55? Only if I do a turbo upgrade. Just because like the diverter valve, there's really like as long as yours works, there's no necessary real benefit to having it done. My car's not pushing all that much more power. If I were to do it just because I'm already down in there, if I'm already going to go through all that work, I might as well just do the turbo as well. Danilo, thanks. I found the oil filter housing gasket is leaking. Okay. Arrange with the mechanic to solve the leak. Also need to fix another leak in the oil pan. Fortunately, I don't have a leak in the valve cover. Good. Actually, I don't know. I'd rather have the valve cover than the oil pan because you kind of got to drop the subframe for that. But if you have both already scheduled, perfect. Start with that and then go from there. If anything else happens, just let us know. Vendetta, I can't send pictures. Oh, that's right. Send it to my Instagram at RoomTuber. I'm thinking of piston rings. If you send it to me on Instagram, I'll put it up on my story and I'll ask people, and then I'll tag you, or if you already follow me, then you'll see it. Everybody that puts in a response, I'll do it. I forgot who sent me something like there was like a weird sound, and they thought it was like their wheel bearing. So hopefully, if you're okay with that, send it to me there, and I'll post it, and hopefully you'll get the answers you're looking for. And I've done the entire top end disassembly with nothing as far as debris or scuffing, not even slight cam wear. I'm boroscoping piston heads right now through the sparkulator cavities. I don't know. That's huge. Because you also have to think about like how's it going to get through the channel to get to the oil filter? Like that is, and then that you have no blockages or increases in pressure because of buildup. That's I'm so sorry. I really don't know. From 2016. Let's see if this got resolved. Okay, so this doesn't look as big as the ones that you were talking about. Vanos bolts? Huh. Vanos bolts again. Well, I hope that's not the case. Valve could blow off. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have no idea. If you find out, please let us know. I'm interested in that too, and I hope that it gets resolved and you're able to enjoy your car for a much longer time before the next incident pops up. Hmm. Sorry about that. Let's see here. Oh, that's it. Okay. Well, I guess if that's the last one, thanks everybody for joining me in the live stream today. I know it's a little bit later and we haven't gotten together like this in a while, so it's good to uh, kind of get back in the flow of things and talk with you guys again and troubleshoot some stuff. Anybody who asked a question that we didn't really get to, if you want, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram at RoomTuber. And then in terms of next week, it seems like we have some tool requests or tool recommendation requests. And so we can definitely go through that. So I look forward to seeing all of you next Tuesday. I hope all of you have a good rest of your day and good evening. And I'll see you in the next one.